Okay, before I begin, thank you again for being here. Let me just open in a word of prayer. I'm seeing a familiar face. Pastor Richardson, could you come and open us in prayer, please?
Hallelujah. Heavenly Father, we just say thanks. Thanks, oh God, for bringing us all here today, Father God, as we are about your kingdom's business, Father. We pray that your will be done, oh God. You work through the facilitator, you work through the minister, Father God, to impart the knowledge that we need, Father God, to continue to be effective in ministry among the youths in your kingdom. Heavenly Father, take control of every aspect, O God, of this gathering. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. You may have your seats. So I'm getting straight into the proceedings for this morning. I don't want to take too much time. We're already 20 past 9, and I want to give the speaker as much time as possible. So just to give you a bit of information about Reverend Harper, Reverend Warren Harper is a pastor, leader, and educator within the Pentecostal Assemblies of the West Indies, the Northeast District, Trinidad. He holds a Bachelor of Theology, a Master's in Biblical Studies, and a Master's of Theology in Practical Theology, focusing on youth ministry. He is deeply invested in fostering the spiritual and personal growth of young people. He has been the lead pastor of Guayco Pentecostal Church since 2010 and serves as a part-time lecturer and administrator at the West Indies School of Theology, where he is currently the acting president. Reverend Harper's experience in youth ministry and his passion for youth and young adult development underscores his dedication to create a nurturing environment for spiritual growth and leadership among young people. His commitment to education and youth development positions him as a voice for promoting healthy youth engagement and growth within religious settings. So I have no more to say. I think that says enough. Those of you who would have been in our last seminar would remember the wealth of knowledge he came and he was able to share with you. And we hope to hear a lot more today. So as we please put our hands together for Reverend Warren Harper.
Thank you very much, Crystal. Good morning to everybody. Thanks for coming. I'm glad for this opportunity I'm seeing a couple of WIS students, nice, and seeing some family. And I know this brother from, even though he doesn't know me, Five Rivers. Yes, leading worship and seeing you around. Blessings to all of you. As was said, my name is Warren Harper. Just kind of waiting for them to get it set up. I lecture in WIST, and sometime Crystal, the organizer, she had asked myself and my wife, we were doing a session, and we didn't get to, I had to kind of rush through some things, and so the decision was that we would kind of do a revisiting of that in a different pace, but we also do it with the awareness that there would be other voices, new persons who would not have heard. So what I want to be doing, to give a sense of what we want to be looking at, a little bit of, just a little background of what I had. As was said, I did a master's, and it came out really out of a concern for the effectiveness challenges that we're getting there. Effectiveness challenge that we face in working with youth in our churches. And I came to the conclusion that, and I'm not saying in any way that I have all the answers, but I think I have come to understand something that can be a little helpful to us. But my own struggle with wondering, I grew up in youth work. I'm a Trinidadian by birth. I grew up in Barbados, came back here to study, still here. All right. In being involved in youth ministry, that's where I got my start in service as a very young Christian. And I know that as youth leaders, they put out a lot. Youth leaders really put out a lot. They really, really, really do. But sometimes there's a measure. If it is, I remember doing a survey and I was asking the question about how fulfilled do you feel as a youth in doing youth work? And you found that the fulfillment level was very high generally. And then when you ask about the frustration, how frustrated do you feel when you measure what you do and you realize that that was high? So people were getting a lot of fulfillment from doing youth work. When they look at what they did, they feel frustrated. All right? And they were having challenges with doing the youth ministry. So I said, the long and short is that I invested myself. I had options and I invested myself. And I did decide to do some additional studies, but focusing on youth ministry because I wanted to be a solution. I'll tell you, I made this conclusion about myself, all right? I am very, very passionate, very burdened. I have a heart for youth work, but I'm too old to be a youth leader. I've accepted that. So I'm not fighting that. So you won't see me with my pants down low and my cap on backward and those kinds of things. I'm too old for that, Mr. Prayer. All right? My role, I see my role and my desire and my heart and my passion is to help those who do youth work do it better. That's my focus. So I see myself as helping to improve and increase the capacity of people like yourself, young people who are still on the ground, who have the energy that I don't have, and who have the look that I don't have, and those kinds of things. And that's okay. I did my research in my district, the Northeast District, and the picture really was not prettiest. But I think I learned some things along the way that some of it which I'll be sharing. What I'll be looking at is specifically the angle of the church itself as a setting for healthy youth development. The church itself, all right? I will tell you this from the get-go. You know, I am going to say youth work instead of youth ministry, okay? The reason being is that one of the key differences is the context, but it's the same idea. So those who are involved in youth ministry, let me see those who are involved in youth ministry. Right, those who are involved in youth ministry are essentially involved in youth work, okay? Your setting might be the church, or your setting may be some aspects of Christian education or some other group, right? So what is said is equally applicable, all right? So what I want to be looking at is I'm going to be talking about the perspective that I have shifted to. And I think is I'll explain why I shifted there. And you can ask questions. I want to make sure you understand everything I'm saying. So you can ask questions and so as I go along, I'll see how I can go as fast but as clear and comprehensive as possible. But my thing is that I want you to understand. At the end of the day, your understanding is the important thing, not my mere dispensing information. I want to make sure you understand. Once you understand, we move on and we see how the time goes. Okay? In the interest of time, I began to suspect something, and I'm going to put it up here because I want to trouble you with it from the get-go, so you'll be thinking about it. As I was doing my own studies, my own research, and I'll explain why I took this particular angle so that you'll be comfortable with it. Because, you know, normally when you talk about it, people are uncomfortable because they may think it is secular. But you'll see what I'm talking about, all right? What I began to suspect is this. And I began to look and see this consistently in churches. It really has to do with what is the outcome? What is the ultimate goal? At the end of the day, we're engaging or we're being engaged in youth ministry, youth work, however you call it. What is the ultimate goal? What is the ultimate outcome? All right? And this is what I found. I began to suspect it, and as I got the feedback from the workers, it confirmed it. The goal I have found in just about all of our churches, well, let me say most of them to be safe in case there's the outlier, although I've not seen it yet. But the goal has ultimately been to produce young people who are able to take over the leadership within the church. That has been the goal. And that's the problem. That is the problem. Just think about it. If that is your goal, that explains why your young people will do well in church, but bring them outside the church, they're not doing well. Because that was never the goal. There's something called serendipity. Serendipity is this. This is an unplanned but positive outcome. Meaning that for those young people who were able to do well outside of church, it was not what you were aiming at. It just happened because you just happened to be doing some things that worked. But what I think we need to be doing is to be targeting, focusing from the get-go on what the goals are supposed to be. All right? So that if there's nothing else, and I hope you get more than nothing, but if there's nothing else, I would want you to at least come away from what we're talking about here with a clear sense that we need to make sure that we have the right target, the right goal. And sometimes you may need some help walking through to determine what that would be, but at the very least, that's a starting point. You're shifting what you're aiming for. And when you start to shift what you're aiming for, you're going to adjust what you do. Okay? Just waiting. Once these are ready for me, then I'll get into it sequentially. Yeah, I could think in the meanwhile. So let me see if this is working. All right. So what I want to do is I'll tell you the angle that I recommend we promote youth ministries along and youth work. Rather than that goal, I want to recommend that we look at a holistic approach to youth development in our churches, in our ministries. So when you're doing youth ministry, let me put it like this. I don't want you to just think of merely we're doing spiritual work, which is normally how it's done. But I want us to think of we're doing holistic work. So what are we aiming for is holistic development, holistic youth development in our church setting. That was really what my thesis was about, holistic development in religious settings, all right? And what I want to do is to help you to just appreciate something that I stumbled upon. I wasn't thinking about it. When I started to read about youth ministry and so, I was not thinking about this. But I stumbled across it, and I wasn't sold on it until I thought about something that I will share in this slide, all right? And that is right there, this thing called PYD, all right? The PYD. I will tell you this first. As it stands right now, the leading approach to working with youth is PYD, positive youth development, in secular and spiritual, all right? In fact, what I found is that when the whole idea, and I'll be explaining what that is about, all right? When I started to read about it, what I found is that there's this body called Search Institute, and these were some of the pioneers. This is in the grand scheme of things, considered still relatively new way of engaging youth. They actually started to recommend churches adopt a PYD approach to working with youth. Churches didn't take them on. Churches continue to trundle along doing it as they are accustomed to doing it. So churches didn't really change their approaches to how they engage the youth. But you know who did? World Health Organization, United Nations, governments, etc. Why? Because they recognize that the PYD, what they call the PYD model, the PYD framework, was grounded on what they call empirical evidence, meaning that as they sought to discover and explore this thing, they researched it. They researched its effectiveness, and they found that it increases the likelihood of certain outcomes, all right? But for whatever reason, churches, by and large, rejected it, and they kept doing things the old way. And they continue to write books along the old way and have the same kind of outcomes. All right? So I want to trouble you, and you will see why I am committed to that model. All right? Why? Think about this why. This will help you to appreciate the why. All right? Next slide, please. Right. As I said, there is a thinking under this. There's a kind of what they call a theoretical framework. There's a lot of thought has gone into this. Research has gone into this, and you'll see again the connection. Next slide. All right. It actually was something I found in the Bible. I was reading something when I was studying this. I found that I was reading something about youth, and they said that healthy young people need to develop simultaneously. Don't move it as yet, right? Healthy young people need to develop in a number of ways. That's what the research said. They said that healthy young people need to develop, and they mentioned spiritually, physically, socially, emotionally, mentally, etc. That is what they were, when they looked at what makes a healthy young person and what were the components of it, that is what they found. And when I read that, a light went off in my head and I stopped. Because I thought of two instances in my Bible. Samuel. 1 Samuel 2:26. All right? You can go to the next slide, please. All right? It said, let's see if we can see what it says. Yeah. It talked about how Samuel developed. Give it one more click. Right. No, just go back a bit. It talked about how Samuel grew. Somebody's supposed to be there, but it's probably sleeping. It talked about, and Samuel grew in favor with God. He grew up physically. and in favor with people. But we are not followers of Samuel, we are followers of Jesus. And then the big one for me was the next one, which is Luke 2:52, which essentially said, and Jesus increased in wisdom, in stature, in favor with God, and with favor with man. And then that did it for me. And I felt as if everything had come full circle. Right? And then I started to explore, and then I've made the conclusion that when we are engaging youth in our churches, we have to be mindful and concerned that our young people are developing in all these areas simultaneously. Mindful, but bear in mind what you will find, in case I don't get a chance to. The thing is that at the same time, churches must ensure that this is what is happening. But churches don't have to be the initiator of all of these things. But it means then that churches must be thinking as partners. Okay? Partners. You understand what I'm saying? So what this starts to show then is that, I grew up in church and I was a youth leader. And I remember the fight down that we had with them older people. My God, them old people. How many of you have that fight down in your church? 1, 2 persons have this fight down in them churches. We fighting down with those. So I was always like a go-betweener and a champion of the rights of the youth. Right? And now I'm an adult, a full adult. But I realized that we kind of accept it as a given, right? But I've come to realize that really is part of the problem. In fact, what I found out is that there's one group within the church who must not understand youth development. Anyone could guess which group that is? There's only one group that doesn't need to understand youth development, how you develop. There's one group. Anyone want to take a guess? That group that does not need to spend the time to understand how you develop. Anyone take a chance? The youth. The youth. The one group that does not need to understand youth development is the youth. But the topic today is the church but the church itself, the different groups within the church must understand the important role that they play in stimulating the development of the youth. And you will appreciate why that is important. I don't know why this isn't working. All right, next slide. All right. So let's look at this healthy development approach. Next slide, please. All right. I'll be going through. Just think about what it is to be a person. All right. You remember what are we developing? Who are you developing? We're developing people. All right. We're not developing spirits. All right. We're developing people. So when we think about youth ministry, youth development, here's it. Let me go through and talk about a couple of things. The youth that come to your church has these 5 things. They come in a physical form. I'm seeing some physical forms here. All right? That's the way they look. This would be like their physical body, their physical form, etc. But that's not all there is to them. They're also, what constitutes a person is also their sensations. That's the way they feel, right? They're feeling. They bring that with them. Okay? What else are they bringing? They're also bringing, wrapped up in this package, they also bring in their own way of interpreting the world, things around them, their perceptions, how they interpret things, right? Analysis of sensation. They also bring their mental construction. They also bring with them how they think. That is part of being a person. All of you have that. And this can be shaped by things like your heritage. This is things like your personality, your likes, your dislikes. And also your consciousness, your sense of being. All right, that's where what we might say, the spiritual component. All of that, no young person leaves a part of that home when they come among you, right? And you can appreciate that none will have the same kind of experience in those areas. None will have that, okay? And next slide, please. That's what it is to be a person, all right? The other thing about, I want you to think about this. I want you to think about your youth, and I want you to think about this. Think about those factors. These are not the only one. And when I had done this here, social media was not even a big thing. So social media has to be factored in. Its impact has to be looked and studied and see how those would have contributed. But here are some of the things that affect child development. Okay? Their socioeconomic background of the child, all right? You can't kid yourself. Some children come from a good socioeconomic background. They don't have to worry about what they have to eat. All right? Some have to. All right? Some have never traveled in public transport. And some have never traveled in public transport. Some walk everywhere. All right? What about their own individual behavior and health? This has an impact. Now think about these other things we said what makes a person. These things are going to be impacting all of those. The family life, all right? Help me with what kinds of options could they have with family life? Quickly, what kind of options could they have? When you think about different experiences in the family life. Single parent, divorce, those who live, and that is an emerging group, those who were raised with their grandparents. Anything else? Domestic violence in the home, right? Homosexual parents, or parent, etc. Unsafe parent, alcohol, drug abuse, visiting parents, right? Where they see a different man in the house at different points in their life, etc. Right? Some would have lost a parent, right? Etc., etc., etc. The point I want you to think about is that when you think about the family life, remember the thing about youth ministry is a little unique. You know that in youth ministries, you especially target youth. They don't have to be part of the church. So sometimes the youth that come to your youth ministries, they come because they like it. It's a place for them to go. They may not come from a Christian environment either. So you have a lot of factors that are there shaping them, as well as what about their own learning environment, all right? The environment in which they are learning, all right? Some are learning, like let's say, for example, with positive affirmations. Some of them are learning under the street light. Some of them are learning with alcohol and abuse around them. Some of them are learning with limited resources. Some of them are learning by themselves, etc. Okay? What am I trying to say? I'm trying to help you to appreciate that creature that you're working with called a youth. All right? Not in a negative way. I love young people. But I want you to appreciate that when they come, they look like this guy. The God is good all the time, cliche t-shirt, right? But behind the t-shirt, we have a couple of different components. And you have a couple of different things that are helping to shape him. And these are the main ones. There are others. Okay? So I want you to see that it is not as straightforward as we think, because all of these are coming together in one space, and we have to help them develop. Next slide. All right? So here's it. Let's think about their socialization then. All right? Some of them may be there. Let's say you have this scenario. Let's look at their socialization. Some may have what we may call a relatively healthy socialization. You know how they're being shaped and developing. All of these factors are impacting them, maybe in a relatively healthy way, and then others may be having a less ideal scenario, although nobody have a perfectly healthy socialization. Nobody. All right? And you have, just go back a bit. All right? So they grow. So you have it where they have development. I have some images, but they're not coming out. And let's say they come to Christ. You have one person who had a relatively good upbringing. We say another person who had a terrible upbringing. The young people, they come to Christ and they grow. Next slide. Let's look at the ideal, and let's look at what most of you received. All right? The ideal is this. This is how you grow up. From birth to adulthood. Here's this. As I said, most of you grew up like this. Think about this. You had a God-fearing father, married to a God-fearing mother before they had you, ideal, right? Both of them are committed to the things of God. And so they say, we want to raise our children in the fear of Almighty God. And the father, which is the husband of your mother, the only husband of the only mother, we're looking at the ideal, they raise you in the pathway of the Lord. And when you become an adult, you become a relatively healthy adult. Right? Question. All of you who grew up like that, show me your hand. One person, 2, 3 persons. Wow. So the shirt was true. The God is good shirt is true. What? 3 persons. Let me ask you a question. Just to think about it. Don't you think that if we had a less than ideal socialization, isn't it possible that that might have had an impact on who you became and what you were shaped into? Right? So when you come to Christ, this is what is going on. What I want you to see is that you are ministering to different kinds of young people. And you yourself may also have some gaps, some damages, right? Next slide. Here's the reality, and it's a pity that this is not really coming out, right? The reality is this. I want you to say this. I want you to understand this. If you had a less than ideal socialization, when you become a Christian and you accept Jesus Christ into your heart, the act of accepting Jesus Christ into your heart does not automatically fix those things or change those things. I want you to understand that. Okay? Coming to Christ does not fix everything that went wrong, but it puts you on a potential path. Why potential? Because depending on the path you end up actually on, more than the potential will shape what you become. Are we clear? Right. So I want you to understand that. So you could end up with some youth who have, let's use the word damaged. They're not whole youth. And some are fully whole, but that's more ideal than real. All right? Because sometimes you may have a person, they had everything, but they may struggle with self-esteem and loss of value or those kinds of things, and that may affect them, especially when you go to school and you sometimes see your friends or those around you seem to be living a certain kind of better life, and you have to be there like the straitjacket. And you may feel like you go through a phase where you feel like you're robbed in some way. All right? So that may have some esteem issues. Next slide, please. All right? The question we should be asking is this. Your youth program, I'm not asking how good your youth program is, how much fun it is, or whatever. The idea we should ask is, how developmental is it? At the end of the day, how developmental is youth ministries? Is your youth ministries? If you have questions and so as I progress, you can ask. Next slide. All right. So I want to establish some foundations now for holistic and healthy development now, and talk about this and make sure you understand them. Let's go. All right. When we're talking about holistic development, and this is the broadest definition, it is really that you're nurturing their well-being across multiple development. What are some of these development, these domains? Multiple domains or dimensions. For example, when we're talking about holistic development, what are we talking about? Is nurturing their development along multiple domains. Meaning, these domains include, help me out, the one we're best start targeting, the spiritual domain, but also physical, mental, emotional, social, etc. So we're talking about, this is what holistic development is. So this is, when you're thinking about, you're engaging the youth, this is what we're supposed to be thinking about. And you're not just focusing on, and we could add something, you notice that depending on the environment, they tend to have a focus, right? We're not just focusing on the academic, which is really what very often schools tend to focus on. Physical, some nice schools focus on that. Or for us, not just the spiritual domain. Very often, we tell ourselves, and we have an understanding that our focus, our target is on the spiritual domain almost exclusively. All right, next one. All right, why is this important in the church? Let me tell you why this is important. The long and short is that this is important in church because the church really has a lot of natural, when you understand it, the church has a lot of natural resources for promoting holistic development. When you look, when we start to get into the things that youth need to develop, the church itself is a natural set of resources for that. It's amazing. All right? So, like, for example, faith communities, they help to provide a sense of identity and belonging. Right? How do we refer to one another usually? What term we use? Brother and sister. That is the concept, for example, of a family, social support, the nature of church. Just think about church. Right? Social support, moral guidance, that is the church. So it's really amazing that this is something that is, this is what the church is naturally poised to give and to do. It's natural, but it's not one of those things that maybe recognize the value of it. That's why you have to kind of do some restructuring and shaping and understanding. Next one. All right. So you're not seeing the graphic there, but in the graphic, essentially, that's just essentially what I said before, but we're saying that you're putting the youth there, you're looking at the church. What is the church doing for the youth? What does the church then understand its role? What is it doing? It's helping the young people in terms of develop their sense of identity, all right? Give them the social support. You notice, like for example, think about this. Somebody said, single parent. Who said that? Single parent. Who are they lacking in their natural family? Either a mother or a father. And they come into the church. What should they be finding? Huh? You see what I mean? But the problem really is that the churches are rich resources, but they don't see that. You understand what I'm saying? We fight with the youth. We criticize the youth. And we need to recognize that, hey, for example, those things that the child is lacking, they're lacking a father or a mother. They may not be able to find a father or mother in church, but they can find a mothering figure, a fathering figure. They don't feel accepted. What do they find? They find brothers. They find sisters. These things are needs. These things are part of their developmental needs. All right? But if churches don't understand their role, they're going to miss those opportunities. All right? I hope you're seeing that. Moral guidance. All right? You're growing up in a household that doesn't care whether Tuesday come on a Thursday. As a young woman, you start to sprout. You start to blossom. And guys are now telling you you look pretty. You didn't grow up with that. The church potentially can teach you the ways of the world, how to navigate as a Christian safely. As that, but that is normally what parents do, but parents not doing. I hope you understand what I'm trying to show you. All right, let's move on. What are the core dimensions of holistic development? All right, next slide. You notice this, we kind of talk about this. If you can see it, the core development, when we talk about development, holistic development, we want to make sure these things are happening simultaneously. One, we're talking about their cognitive growth, helping them to understand physical growth, emotional, psychological, spiritual, and social. This is what is there in the secular literature. You notice how it coheres so well with Jesus' own development. So I'm trying to build the case. This is how we got to be thinking about. We have to be thinking about ensuring that our young people are on a pathway of holistic development. All right? Afterwards, let me make it easy for you all. Afterwards, if you want the slides, I will just arrange with Crystal and let you get the slides, all right? So that you can focus on just taking notes or asking questions or whatever, all right, to maximize the session. Next slide, all right? All right, so when we're talking about physical, we're just running through, we're talking about certain dimensions, just to understand dimensions, we're talking about like the health, the well-being, exercise, nutrition, etc. So what it's saying is this, so how you going, what's your name? Joshua, right, Joshua, all right, you have a good name, the son of Nun, all right? Joshua, here's Joshua. Joshua, how you going? Not too bad. And then you probe. Well, I don't read things hard, sometimes we don't get a chance to we don't really eat properly and that kind of thing. Well, the Lord is your portion. Pray for him. All right? But we're talking about things where, like, let's say the youth leader, you become concerned about these things. You become concerned about these things. You may not cause it, but you're concerned about these things. You're concerned. If Joshua says, as a growing teenager, he says he's not eating properly. What might be the cause of that? It might be some social reason for that, some economic reason. But if we're talking about holistic development, then we realize, look, if this continues, this child is not going to thrive. You see what I'm talking about? Nutrition. Why sometimes I go to school hungry. All right? Don't go and say be warm and be fed. All right? That becomes something you're concerned about. Next one, physical. Next slide. When we're talking about emotional and psychological health, we're talking about things like this self-esteem, mental health, emotional regulation, resilience, those kinds of things, being able to bounce back, a good state of mind, etc. And you notice none of these things we associate with the work of youth ministry, and that's the problem. Usually when we think about what youth ministry must do, where are we thinking? We're thinking about one domain. And that is sometimes, I asked a question when I was doing my research. The question I asked was, how much of what you learn in youth ministry helps you outside the youth ministry? They said very little. Very little. That would have been shocking when I began the research, but I was seeing patterns, so that wasn't surprising to me, but it was unfortunate. Right? But the youth leaders are giving themselves high marks because, and overall, the church is given high marks because you have these activities, these spiritually focused activities. But they're not really helping the young people where they need to be helped. But I want to make sure y'all don't miss what I'm saying. So I want to make sure I clarify something before I leave this place. Next slide, please. We have social, which is fostering capacity, building capacity. So this social has to do with things like building meaningful relationships, developing community engagement, and developing empathy, being able to care for others. This is part of what their development looks like. Next one. All right? Next slide, please. Spiritual formation, and spiritual in the broader sense of the word now, which is your personal faith, but this is also your moral values, your sense of purpose and connection to something larger than yourself. All of these are the domains of the realm of the spiritual. All right? Next slide. And we associate this here with church work? All right? Cognitive, which has to do with things like learning how to think critically, solve problems, capacity, ability, competence, and so on. And empowered, informed decision making, where they're learning how to think, they're learning how to make decisions, etc. Okay? Next slide. Now, one of the persons who was responsible for, you may have heard about certain things, the ecological systems. People who study psychology are familiar with that. Look at what he would have found, and he developed his theory based on his research and so on. And tell me if that doesn't look like either what we do, what we should be doing, or what we have the potential to do. This explains what? That a young person develops within multiple layers of influence. All right? In other words, a young person, their development is being impacted by many what they call systems or layers. Okay? Some of them are closer and more immediate, and some are more extended. You understand? What's the closest? The family. That's impacting them. But you also have other layers, different systems. All right? You have that's part of what you call the microsystem. So things like these intimate systems are having impact on the youth. Their family life, yes, but they're also impacted by the school that's helping to shape them. The church environment that's helping to shape them. If they're part of clubs, communities, etc., all of these are shaping them. Then it gets wider. It gets wider. For us, we are in what they call the microsystem. We are one of the most intimate influencing system in the life of the youth. Hope you all understand what I'm saying. What I'm saying is this. Remember when we look at the young person who is coming into your church is being shaped by a number of influencing factors. What I would like here is, now it happens, what I want is two brave persons, one male and one female. And I want you to think about your own development. And the question is this. Now, I'm not asking for details, but I am asking this question. Can you identify the different systems that you would have seen their clear impact on your development? And the development could be for good and for bad. So we're not asking for details. But I want to ask you if you could just think about your own socialization when you're growing up. I want to kind of illustrate the point. Can you think about, now this could also be your little friend groups and your the peer groups and those kinds of things. Can you identify those in your mind? Think back to when you were a youth growing up, and can you think about those things that you knew, okay, this was having an impact on me, for good or for bad? I want to hear of one male to just see if you can list these for us. Now, these would not be the only ones, but that you could say, okay, I clearly remember this. These, these affect me, these had an effect on me. These had a shaping on me. And just list them to illustrate my point. We hear from one male, one female. Do we have? Yes. And we'll get a male who will follow immediately after. You can use mine in the meanwhile then.
Hi, morning everyone. I'm Terry and I'm the youth leader for KCFF. So I list my factors. My mom passed, one. Right. Financial. Dad not being around. I was abused. So let me see what else is the major factors that I could think of. Alcohol, not feeling accepted, looking for love in all the wrong places. So I think those were the major factors I could list that affected my youth. For me to find Christ, it was where I was losing hope. So that was my last resort at that point.
How old were you?
How old I am
when
now?
you came to Christ?
I was around 22, 23.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Thank you. I know that some of you also had your checklist when she was mentioning. Let's hear from a gentleman. Thank you so much. Gentleman. Oh, yes, Joshua. Of course, Joshua.
Good morning, everyone. So my factors are abuse, well, friends like gangs, financially, rejection, a lot of rejection, and how to say it in good words. Okay, that will be it.
All right. How many of you were surprised by Joshua's list? Why? Yeah. So I hope that shows you the kind of reality of it. And I hope that will also suggest you kind of hint to the responsibility of leadership. Because even what my sister shared, you need leaders with certain levels of competency to be able to help the youth disentangle themselves from the impact of those things when it comes to youth leadership. All right? You could think about your own script. All right? You could think about your own script. Next slide. All right? Right, now we want to get into some developmental frameworks. There are a number, but I'm looking at some of the key ones, right? And I'll kind of give an explanation. Next slide. All right? You have this system theory. Let me just go to the slide. So we're saying this. We just kind of talked about this. Immediate system, microsystem, your family church. Those help to shape the child. But the school and others, those are impacting the child. So it means then that if I'm serious about helping young people develop, I have to be concerned about what is affecting them. I have to be speaking to those domains of their life. You agree with that? I have to be making sure that in my ministering with and to them, that I am factoring in what's going on at home, what is going on in your school, what is going on in the other areas of your life, what's going on among your friends, etc. Right? These are going to be having the most immediate impact. Next one, please. And you also have the wider ones. All right? In terms of applying this then, next slide. The church, the role the church plays, they interact with these different areas, in terms of ministering and see youth ministry as part of what the wider work of the church, right? But as I said, you're entering into the spheres of the life of the child, all right? Next slide. These are things that, based on his thing, these are some areas that the church can provide. And we're looking at through the work of those working with youth. What can we help them with? We can help them with things like what? Helping them impart like positive values, all right? Things like spiritual nourishment, interpersonal relationship. I'm a pastor. My training is in Bible. For me, the Bible is everything. The Bible is foundational. All right? But, we want to move young people away from being able to just know and memorize and quote. We have to move them to the point where we're able to help them to, what's the word? Apply. We're teaching them how to use the Bible in practical everyday. Their faith must be able to be applied. All right? Why is that important? If it is that you don't teach them how to apply the scriptures, all right, then they will never connect their Christianity to things that really matter, to real life situations, all right? So, for example, you can't give them the Bible message and the condom message together. The Bible message says what? When faced with sexual temptation, X, Y. That's what we're supposed to do as Christians. But you have to be real. And when faced with actual situations, be wise. Condomize. You understand what I'm saying? What am I saying? That's the secular message. That's the secular message. But in giving them the Bible message, you have to give them in a way where they're able to it doesn't feel theoretical. It doesn't show them what does it look like. For example, how does it look? What does it look like? All right? Now, stand up here and telling the young people not to have pre or extramarital sex, or here's the reality. Yeah, also I've got to tell them how to stop having pre and extramarital sex. I mean, the evidence shows that sometimes by the time they reach a certain age, they're no longer virgins. Yeah, I mean, here's it. Brethren, this is the world in which we live. All right? If you want to evaluate that, if you are not a virgin here today, at what age did you lose your virginity? Just to think about it. All right? You don't have to look around or ask, or you don't have to answer that. I'm just kind of showing you something. But what I'm saying is using it as an example. This is, I remember some things, remember we said there are certain other factors that are happening there. Remember, you don't have the ideal. You have a number of other factors that are shaping. So you have to, the youth leader has to approach this from the standpoint of a sense of a full understanding of youth. What is real for youth as a starting point. And then as leaders, when it comes to connecting them with the scripture, you have to show them what this could look like. How can they actually do it? You understand what I'm saying? Are you all following what I'm saying? Very often what we do is that we would say, this is the biblical prescription, which we need to. But what we need to be able to do is very often we need to help show them and appreciate and understand how can this practically be applied. What happens if we don't do that? If we don't do this, what is going to happen is this. Our young people are going to think that Christianity don't really work when we need it to work. And that's not what we want. We want them to grow with God. That to me is practical discipleship. All right? Great. Next slide. This here now is the... I want to explain this here. I want to make sure you understand this very carefully. This is one of this is called the developmental asset framework. Okay? And this way, if you could get this is going to help you with your understanding of youth. I use it, and you're the one that will follow. I hope you find it very helpful. Next slide. The idea, it is really, they say it's about 40. So they sometimes refer to it as 40 developmental assets. All right? It says essentially this. All right? In the developmental assets framework, what it says is that youth have what is known as internal assets. All right? These are believed to be 20 they identify about 20 internal assets that youth possess. All right? And these internal assets are to be developed within the youth. Okay? And there are also 20 external assets, which are the supportive environments that help the youth to develop their internal assets. Does that make sense? All right? I will use Joshua. Come, Joshua, please. I want to make sure you understand this. All right? Joshua is the youth man. He's a youth, right? In terms of the asset, the developmental asset, they are saying that there are 20 of these assets, right? 40 overall. They're saying that 20 of them are in Joshua. They are in him. They're things that he possesses. He possesses these 20 assets, right? These are called internal assets because they're in the youth. And this would include things like self-esteem, confidence, ethical standards, etc. Let's think about these three. They're more than that. Like, we're saying that within Joshua, think of these as seeds. Seeded within Joshua will be certain assets such as self-esteem, confidence, an ethical value system. Right? Where are these? These are in Joshua. Right? But what Joshua needs is supports to develop those things that are within him. And these three young people here, you all come, please. All right? We're just trying to... These are the adults. These are the leaders. These are the adults. Y'all, I want you to kind of stand around Joshua. All right? All right? I want one in front. Right, this nice. And the reason why I want him to stand in front... Where's Joshua? Joshua represents the youth. Joshua is in the center, right? What you all do is you all provide the external assets. Okay? What is in Joshua? Internal, such as self-esteem, etc. But what has to happen to these things that are in Joshua is these things need to be developed. The capacity is seated in him, but these things are to be developed. What he needs is external supports. All right? Now, you all represent institutions now. You are his father. You represent the family. You are his teacher. You represent his school. You are his pastor. You represent church. Everybody face Joshua. And what you all are doing, you all are symbolizing your pulling. Let's symbolize your pulling. What you all are doing is you all are helping Joshua. You're supporting him in the development of those internal assets. We cannot speak for the schools. We cannot speak for the schools. But we represent both the church and by extension, the family, hopefully. All right? What ideally is supposed to be happening is that all three of you all should develop a working relationship around Joshua. All right? Develop a working relationship around Joshua. Why? You all are aiming for the same thing. All right? It's kind of a lot harder than it looks in that we are not naturally connected to these things, but we're just looking at how it could look like so that at least you could begin to think about that. What happens then is that the goal is to help Joshua develop those things that are in him. What is in him is in every other young person, but in different domains. Yes. Mm. Right. Yeah. Now, what it is that the understanding is that we use the language, thanks. But we kind of use the language that you have no self-esteem. You have no values. But that's not really true. That's not true. You see, what when we talk about something like self-esteem, is there anybody in here, don't answer, but just think about the question. Is there anybody here who has zero self-esteem? The answer is no. And the truth is there's some who may have low self-esteem, high self-esteem. So the only thing that differs among people is the quantity. And while we won't say the how, the idea is that this is like saying, if a person has, we know that, okay, we want to help this person build their self-esteem. So what you're doing is helping them build their self-esteem. Okay? So think about this. This could become one of those things that we're targeting in our youth programming. You know, what we're doing is that we're doing things that are targeting building self-esteem in the youth, because we know that this is one of the things in them that need to be developed. And you think about the different areas. Hope that answer. All right? Or at least put you in a thinking direction. All right? You all understand the concept? All right, next slide, please. So, next slide. How do you apply that? You see those people around him? These are some things that could happen to help where this could be, like relationships. So these are things you help in develop relationships within the church. Outside the church, you have mentors, etc. You can provide support where you have these community initiatives, etc. Next slide. So sometimes you... now, I believe that we must ground everything in the scriptures. We want our young people to grow with Christ. We want people to grow. Jesus said, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word. I believe that. So what we want to do is ground people in the word of God. And experimental learning as well. Now, I'll tell you something. Experimental learning is where you're going to make every experience a teachable moment. Try doing that. What did you learn from this? As a Christian, what did you learn from this? Right? Failure. They failed. They committed, well, You could say they make a mistake, or you could say they commit a sin. I prefer to say they commit a sin. All right? A little bit let's not soften what it is. All right? They committed a sin. Okay. Let's make this a learning experience. How can you use a tragedy, a crisis, a negative moment, something stupid that the young person did, because young people are known for folly. The Bible says that, all right? And when you understand how the brain develops, it makes sense, all right? How can you now use this? I will tell you this, though. Much of those key learning opportunities will not come from the pulpit, but they will come from personal relationship with the youth, which is what will have to be done within the context of youth ministries. It is easier. Which is easier? Let me touch on something more sensitive. You young ladies, all right? You dress inappropriately, all right? Tight, short, revealing, etc. You want to look nice, okay? Let me ask you. Tell me which one you think will work better. A good hardline pulpit exposition on dress, or if an adult come on, what's your name? Carissa? You have a relationship and they talk to you personally about your dress. How many of you would think that the pulpit would be more effective than I have a relationship? Now, I personally will not do that. If it was a dress issue, Warren Harper, that's my name, I will say, I'll ask my wife to talk to her. I won't do that. I'm a man. I want to provide guidance, but I'm not going to do that. Ayana, I'm not going to do that. I may ask you, Ayana, you could just have a conversation. And don't go say, well, Pastor Harper tell me. No, she's not going to do that. You know? Which you think will both may cause a measure of embarrassment. But which one you think would be more impacting, one, and two, effective? Yeah, the relational one. That's the thing. The thing really is the impact is that effective ministering at the level of the church must be highly relational. You understand? For guys as well. So I just pick on the girls, but for the guys as well. Next one. The PYD model. This one here is another model. Think of it like this: 5 C's plus 1. They sometimes call it 5 C's plus 1. All right. Essentially, you have these, and they found this framework. When they look at everything, they summarize it, and this is one I especially want you to get. 5 C's plus 1 is let me explain what it is. It's a strength-based, proactive approach to youth development. Strength-based, proactive approach. Right? Let's look at the element. Let's look at the words. Proactive. Why do you think it's called proactive? I mean, why do you think strength-based? Why do you think it is strength-based? Why do you think they call it strength-based? You're not sure? Well, You're working what is already there? Yes. The idea is that, what's the opposite of strength? Weaknesses. A strength-based approach starts with what the youth already have, what the youth already is, what the youth already can do, as opposed to a negative approach. That's why it is called positive. It is similar to the internal assets. It's like we say, not that he has no self-esteem. That's a negative approach. Strength-based is what? He has esteem to be developed. It might be small, but it's strength-based, right? God, man. Why you so talkative? How does that sound? What is that? Right. Strength-based says that this person has the gift of gab, but they don't know how to channel it, use it well. So the strength, what it does is you actually are doing what the Bible says. The Bible says consider one another. The other is study. Oh, okay, yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. Yes. Of course. Correct. 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 And that's why they focus on it as a strength based. That's why they also call it proactive. What they do is that they look at these as strengths to be developed. That's what makes it positive. Strengths to be developed. And now this is what causes the youth leaders here to turn gray. Because now what you're fighting up with is not what can we do to ensure the youth have a good time this evening, but rather what can we do to help develop the self-esteem of our youth. So we're not going to fight up. We're thinking about designing your program around a clear developmental goal. So your youth, everything that is going to be happening in this youth ministries session this evening is going to be focused on how can we develop this. We're focusing on self-esteem. So what can we do that can help to develop this? What you know is that you're not missing when it comes to meeting a need. All right? Why you have to pull out your hair is because youth are unpredictable. That's one. Because one of the principles of youth development is all youth. All youth means that you are looking for ideally 100% engagement in what you are doing. All right? Here's an example. When I go to a youth ministry, you know what I'm looking for? You know what I'm not looking for? Well, right, okay. The numbers, but apart from that, what I'm not looking for is I'm not looking for who is engaged. That's not my concern. Because if a youth is not involved in an activity, the activity is not impacting the youth. I want you to get that as a thought. If the young person, if you're doing something and the young person is not engaged, then the young person is not being impacted. Okay? So I started to look at that, and it has helped me. And one of the classic examples is the worship segment. All right? Too bad for them. They don't know what they're missing out. Right? No. It's not. That's a problem. And this is really what you have to be looking at as a youth leader who's focusing on development. So as you move around, you're not looking at those who are. It could be and I just use in worship. It could be a worship. It could be a talk. It could be a discussion. You have to take a scan and look at who's not engaged. I have a 17-year-old son. And I see this sometimes a lot. Look at the posture. Worship what? What does that say? What does that say? What's that saying? What's your response? Get up, sit up. No. This person, you are selling something they're not buying. They're bored, they're disconnected. Here's the headache. All youth means we have to ask, okay, how do we cater for young people where that style of communication is not reaching them? You can't tell them to like something they don't like. You understand what I'm saying? Any questions there? Okay, yes.
Testing.
Testing. So the question is, what about a young person in your youth work who is purposefully doing that? Like, we would say that they're looking for attention, but they would be interested. There would be things that they would be interested in, but it's always, when you ask them, so what did you think? And they're like, well, like, you could tell that it's a purposeful
No, but what do they
thing.
say? What do they say?
They say things like, yeah, normal. Yeah, it's normal.
Yeah, but one of the things I've learned that one of the most elastic term is normal. You got to find out what do you mean. When you say, what do you mean? When you say it's normal, what do you mean? Yeah, okay, but let me tell you what really could probably be pointing to what might be the issue. Most likely, respectfully, that's all you do. That's the only method you use. All right? No, that's what I said could be. Right? No, here's it. What's your name? Tanisha? The work is going to be on the youth leader. I'm just telling you, first thing, the work is on the youth leader. All right? Hopefully you will see some suggestions as we progress. But sometimes we may probably need to give them a different role in the youth ministries. All right? Give that individual a different role. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. So, we have a team on the youth exec. And we come with different personalities, of course. We come with different methods. We've tried everything, and I know some of y'all will know the young person I have in mind, but there's one young person that nothing reaches them in that way. Like, how do you deal with that? And even though in other settings, because I can speak with them, I have a relationship with them. And, you know, you would hear, like, what they like and whatnot, but when they come to youth ministry, like, they have to, it just seems as though they have to act like it's
Right,
just
yeah.
normal.
Question is,
What's up?
why do they come to youth ministries?
They don't want to be home.
Right, yeah.
There's that.
No, but
I
I'm
did
asking
ask
for your
them-
philosophical understanding of why should they be there?
I think, well, knowing them and what I know about them, apart from
Okay, what is the role of the youth in youth ministries?
to develop the young person
Hmm?
holistically.
No. we want you to go back to before 9:30. You're 9:30.
Apart from giving them a space, so we don't want it to look like
Who we?
like Sunday morning.
Who's
The
we?
youth ministry. I
No,
call it
we. Help me with we.
The youth leaders,
Okay, good.
right? So it's a space that is not like Sunday morning,
I know.
and it's open,
Yeah.
a safe space that they
You're
can
right.
socialize.
What's a safe space? What do you mean by that?
So come on.
No, these
Ask
are
the question.
yeah. No, but these are important. That's an important term.
Okay, so
Safe
just
space.
A space, an environment that they could feel comfortable in expressing how they feel and share and learn. Anything else? Yeah.
You find a trouble in you.
Yes.
Yeah. I do that. But here's something to think about. One of the big things, and I'll tell you some things that I started to do in church, all right? And I think we're still on the journey of transforming how we're doing youth ministries. One of the big things is, okay, let me ask you a question before I tell you that. I want you to describe your committee for me.
In what way, like?
All right. You can give me this. You can give me the information. The officers, the roles, the ages of your youth committee.
Age group?
But I want them specifically. You're the leader.
No.
Okay. The leader is how old about?
34.
34. That's the youth leader. Who else you have?
We have many persons. Don't call your name.
No, not the name, just the
Just
office and the age.
The ages, 30,
Right.
31.
This person who's 30, what is their role?
We don't really have roles.
Okay.
Specific roles.
Okay.
We just have yes, the youth leader, but we consider ourselves like a team.
A team, right? Yeah.
So we don't have roles specifically.
All right, give me the age group, the age range.
25?
25.
25 to 34.
That's the youth committee.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of the problem. Here's the thing.
Cool.
Okay, just hear the thinking. Here's the thinking. Maybe using the problem might be not really like that. Here's it. The purpose of youth ministry, if you make it developmental, then everything about how you design it focuses on that. The problem really is that your committee, the committee that you have, gives a clear statement of the role that the youth play. you want to move away from the idea of developing programs for youth to developing programs with youth. All right? One of the leading principles is the principle of co-creation. Co-creation. Where the youth are co-developing what is happening. The principle is that you want to involve youth as deeply in the youth program as is possible. That will include being part of the youth executive. If you're thinking development, for example, consider bringing that person on the youth committee, along with other youth, not as token. So, for example, I had a setting and I suggested this year. And I suggested, for example, if it is that you have a secretary and a treasurer on your committee, somebody deals with the finances, right? Good. And between that age, that means that this is a full adult. Is that helping them develop? Is that helping the committee develop? No. Let me help you with that. No. How old is this person?
Treasurer?
That same person. That individual. 17, yeah. I'll tell you what's happening. You see, at 17, that person is on the verge of transitioning out of where youth ministry has any meaningful impact in the current thing. That person will not. Youth ministry has done all it can for that person at that age. If you want to keep this person or take this person on a pathway of development, incorporate this person in the leadership, but give them developmental opportunities there. Okay. So, for example, if you have a treasurer, right? And let's say if that is one of the areas that this person could think, make this 17-year-old the treasurer. And make the treasurer the assistant treasurer. The treasurer now has the experience and they are the adult. If you make this young person the treasurer, they will be learning under a caring adult. And it could be a developmental experience for him. And give that person a full and legitimate voice. But not only that, consider reconstructing how you organize your youth ministries. Because Peter has this way in the Bible of speaking up for the rest of the people. This person may be speaking up for what some of the other youth may be saying. And he may be explicit, but others may. Young people are funny creatures. Young people, older folks will go to church. How was church? Church was boring. Young people just stop coming. They stop coming. All right? You said 17. 17 is really the age. In fact, I have found that the most effective, probably most youth ministries should probably focus on, if you want to do the most impactful ministry, you should probably think about those youth who are 13 to 16, middle adolescence. All right? Because you're not the most effective when you have, you're most effective when you acknowledge and you're treating them as a natural group. That's middle adolescence, or maybe 14 to 17 thereabouts. But what's happening is that they are at different developmental stages. So most likely your program caters to the stage he has left. Now, of course, this increases the complexity of youth ministries because you can't do it like a one-size-fits-all, which is how most youth ministries are organized. All right? So consider, in those positions, consider making some of the adults more supportive and go back to the little thing there. Consider making that more supportive and give the young people. Now, if you want it to be done perfectly, let the adults keep doing it. If you want it to be developmental, accept that it's not going to be done perfectly, but it's going to be developmental. And that your activities would have genuinely given your young people life skills. That's why we're talking about the church as a setting for development. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
And that's just part of some of the ideas.
Thank you.
Take 10 minutes. Take a 10-minute break, cool your head, and then we come back. All right. I trust you can eat and listen at the same time. Great. And I will reserve the temptation to pick out persons who are eating to ask questions to them. All right. I want to explain. Make sure you understand the framework here. All right. You have these things listed, but there's a kind of, these were kind of almost circular. So this works like a cycle where you have this thing here that is an ongoing dynamic. All right? And you'll see they're interrelated. So so the PYD framework is strength-based, as I explained that. Proactive. Why is it proactive? Is the opposite of proactive is reactive. Why it is proactive is because it is focused on prevention rather than correction. Okay? This approach, the approach that is taken here, looks at preventing what. Now, you have this term, you have antisocial. The opposite of antisocial is pro-social. All right? So what you're looking at is you want to promote pro-social behavior while preventing antisocial behavior. Now, one of the persons, one lady, she said, one of the leading voices said, Lady Pittman is her last name, she said, problem-free does not mean fully prepared. Problem-free is not fully prepared. Meaning this, not because a young person is not exhibiting problems does not mean that they are fully prepared for what they have to face. Okay? So our thing is not merely keeping youth from getting into problems, but helping them to be developed along the pathway where they are able to face what they need to face. Okay? So we are not just about preventing problem behavior. We want to help you to be on a developmental pathway. All right? Good. So with the PYD framework, they have, and I'll kind of explain how some things can look. Can't remember what was on the other slide, but I will kind of just talk about some things before we go there. You have these 6: competence, confidence, connection, character, caring. All right? What you want to do, the goal really is developing competence, right? And I'll use an illustration. Competence, which leads to confidence. Competence, which leads to confidence, right? You're doing this through connections, right? Which helps to develop character, and which leads to caring, right? And which will hopefully translate into the 6th C, which is contribution. So it's interconnected. All right? Now, I want somebody who is considered to be good at worship leading? Well, I know this guy is a worship lead. What's your name? Brendan? Brendan, we have Brendan. So, Brendan, you mind coming? Brendan. All right. This well-known worship leader. Now, here's the thing. Brendan, the guy is good. The guy is good. And because he's good, he is very competent, right? And because you're competent, when you lead worship, are you afraid? Are you timid? No. Because he's competent, he is confident. So every time we have anything to do with worship in our youth ministries, we call on Brendan. We call on Brendan. We always call on Brendan. And you're not just leading worship here, you lead it in church, you lead it open it. Every place we call him, this is the go-to guy. Funerals, this is the guy. After a while, how much competence is he developing? After a while, very little. I mean, you're at the top of your game. Let me now have, so let's say this is the youth, the go-to youth. Because you know you have some youth who just good at that. And so what do? We always calling them. And you know what we are guaranteed? A good worship service. We're guaranteed that because they're good. Now here's the problem. Here's the thing. I want somebody who don't think they're so good at leading worship. Somebody who's not a worship leader. We want somebody who's not a worship leader here. I'm sure we have, we have, what's his name again? And you see how she walked up here. Right? You're afraid? Yeah. Kristen, right? Now here's what the PYD says. Usually when we're having something for the youth. We're having a session and say, who are we going to call on? This is the man. But why are we calling on him? Say that again. You want this service to be good. That's the outcome, the goal. But we said no. What do you want, Ayana? What do you want? What's your focus? Merely having it good, or we want to develop, so we want to develop her. So, Mr. Worship Superstar, here's what to do. Now, he's an adult. Oh, we kind of, them young, we can't really let children do a man's job. So we've not been accustomed to letting the youth do it. That's why she can't do it. She never got a chance. So here's what to do. Here's what you're going to do. Teacher, your responsibility is going to be to teach her. All right? Now here's the thing. You are also going to get developed because nobody ever asked you to do that. So while you're good at leading worship, you're never really good at helping develop others. Right? So you know what's going to have to happen here? What's going to happen? You are going to help her to develop competence. So come a little closer. But in doing this, you have to develop a relationship, adult, youth. So this is going to develop connection. Okay? You're the Christian leader, So you're not just going to pass on skill, you're also passing on character formation. Because you're not just teaching her the art of worship, you're teaching her all that it entails. Right? I'm afraid. That's where you start. And you said, it's okay. All right? What are you providing for her? You're providing support, encouragement, guidance, correction, etc. All right? What does that sound like? That sounds like caring. All right? And he's also helping you to develop some of those same values. Caring. All right? So go a little closer now. What happens after a while? What should happen after a while? She becomes, first time is like jello hands. After a while, what happens? She develops confidence because she's developing competence. All right? But what is happening, a level of discipleship is now happening because you're not just passing on skill. What's happening? Mentoring is taking place. All right? And that leads to transformation of character, caring, the values, etc. What do you think happens after a while? What do you think is going to happen to her after a while? So thank you, Brendan. She's a young lady. All right? There's a youth. But who we calling for on worship now? We have options. But we calling her. And here's the mistake we make. We start calling, because we train this youth. We have this good youth worship leader. What do we start to do? We start to do the same thing we were doing there. What should we now do? You start to get a little cocky. Yeah, I find it kind of going to your head because everybody. So what happens now? So now, what are we about? What's our goal? Your development. So now we're going to find somebody else or others who need to be developed. When we first started, we asked him to teach. Now we say to you, you have to be the trainer. Me? I never do that. Ask him how he did it. You see? Connection is there. So now, Brendan, you are mentoring her still, because you're helping her to develop. Now she's doing what you did. But you also have, it broadens the influence of the adult in the life of the younger person. I never trained anybody before. You're not on your own. Brendan says, I'll help you. I'll support you. I encourage you. We now direct persons in your direction, new people to be developed. And what happens? The environment starts to become developmental because it becomes the psyche of how you're doing youth work. It was not done perfect, but that's not the goal. All right? Ultimately, you want to live for something bigger than yourself. Contribution. Where you're going to say, no, we're going outside of this zone and we're going to be doing something for somebody. All right? Whether it is you're going in another church or someplace in the community or whatever, and you are now serving outside yourself. You're using your own developmental stuff to serve somebody else. All right? Contribution. And it is a cycle. It becomes like a kind of network. That is the paradigm of PYD. All right? Do you think you understand that? Okay, good. Thank you. I'm a pastor. I'm also a lecturer. I give assignments. All right? So for the next 10 minutes, what you will do for me is you will form groups of about 5 persons, and you will think about one thing that you would like to, let's say, choose a hypothetical scenario where you're looking at passing on some kind of skill in your youth ministries, and come up with a way in which you're going to do it. And then when you come, you'll just briefly explain how you're going to do it. So just get about 5 or 6 persons together, and hopefully the persons you choose are not from your church. Why? Because that will help you to develop connections. And if you never felt they could talk to different people, it will help you to develop confidence. Yeah. So I'm going to put a timer. You have exactly 10 minutes. You come up with some kind of idea, about 5, 6 persons. Your 10 minutes starts now. going so well. All right, but yeah. So you're coming one after the other. Just give us, I'll give you about a minute, between a minute and 2 minutes at the most, to just share, give us an overview, no lagging, all right, so that we can see how we maximize the rest of the time. So one after the other, you just run quickly, run up here. All right. Yeah.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So we chose public speaking as the gift, or so we want to, the skill here we want to develop in the youth. This is my lovely group here. Yeah, full team. Yeah. Yeah, so we had to use public speaking, and through the same method that Sir would have demonstrated, we decided to take one of the young persons and involve them in not just sharing also, but even extending it to things like announcements, scripture reading, and even actually doing part of the youth service itself. So they would take over a portion of the service. And obviously they would be connected with a member of the leadership or so forth who have experience in that area to pass on insights and help them through the process of that public speaking and so forth. And through that, confidence would come, the connection would be built through the person, the overseer, the mentor. Yeah, and then character would be developed through as passing on of values from their mentor, that kind of thing, working with them, that relationship, and right, yeah, and also just on the point of character, as they move into that role of leadership or so forth, where they in the front line, that would kind of force them to maintain a particular character that is in alignment with the position that they now function in. So that would also help to build character. All right, and they would also be responsibility and accountable to the person they connected to, and then caring. Right, the caring would be demonstrated through the connection, right? Because the person who dealing with them would obviously have to care and to give them their time and so forth, and that could be passed on from person to person. You're welcome.
Hi. Hi everyone, good evening. So this is my group over here. Whoop whoop. So I'm going to keep ours really short and sweet. What we came up with is actually an initiative that we were supposed to have here at the church, which is where we would let the older woman teach the younger woman. So once a month, we would let a carefully picked older woman come into the youth group and teach the young ladies and men how to do stuff like cooking and baking and all these sorts of things. As well as for the men, we could also let a man come in, or we could go out and learn how to change a tire and how to deal with stuff in terms of vehicles. So in this way, we would build relationship and build character, and we'd have all the C's in one.
Good morning, everyone. So my team and I, we have developed an initiative called Leadership, which focuses on leadership, especially on Sundays. So once a month, we will have youth takeovers that basically incorporates all aspects of youth in all the aspects of a Sunday service, right? So from hospitality, from the ushers, to the sermon, to worship, to the instruments, all of that in one, basically. And so we kind of developed a 5-phase plan, right, where it begins from identifying the strengths, right, of our pool of youths, right, seeing what each one is capable of, what they may be able to do best in their abilities, etc. And once you have identified their strengths, then we come into a place where they get to volunteer on their own and really sign up for what aspect of Sunday service they would like to take charge of. After that, then we go into another phase where we help the youth exec team kind of help them develop and of course base it on scripture. So everything that they do, they remember that this is for God's work, and this Sunday service is not just any other service, but it is something that someone can come into a service and be healed. And so after they go through that kind of training and they are developed more, we do somewhat of a run or a dress rehearsal kind of a Sunday service where we allow them to get a hands-on experience of everything that happens on a Sunday. And then it finally happens where Sunday comes and they do their thing. We kind of step back and allow them to take that position on. And our last step is feedback, because we believe it's important that not just one Sunday comes and they do it and then that's it, but we let them know what worked, what didn't work, and how they can learn from it and develop. And it becomes somewhat of a routinal type of activity that happens in the youth group. And we believe that it's really important because, as one of our group members said, the older generation won't be here all the time, and it will come a time where they will pass on. But what will happen if none of our youths are trained to handle a Sunday service? What will happen when all our dedicated ushers and our dedicated deacons, etc., leave? What will happen? Will the church just fade? So therefore, we believe that it's so important that they get a hands-on experience of every single thing that goes on in the church, but they also see the importance of it. And that is our presentation.
Thank you. While the other group is coming, let me just make a couple of quick comments. One is that don't leave it up to you to volunteer. If you leave it up to them, they're not going to volunteer. Use your adult influence and tell them, and just tell them, this is what I want you to do, all right? It sounds harsh, but it's important. You got to see the capacity in them. Y'all can come in the meanwhile and pull it out. 1. 2 is that I would like us to consider, even with this last one, let's try to move to a place, too, where we make even leveraging the resources of the congregation, not just as because it is a special service or a special thing where it's once a month. Try to do it to the point where it becomes natural. So, like, even though they may get the big thing on the Sunday morning, that it's happening throughout the life of the congregation. And even in the dress rehearsal, I would suggest that probably if you're having a series of dress rehearsals, at some point you step back in the dress rehearsal and let some of the youth kind of lead the dress rehearsal, and you give them guidance over so that they can also develop some of the competencies and the skills before they get there. That is going to help to build them. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. So my group and I, we decided to do entrepreneurial skills with emphasis on marketing and financial literacy. I know those are big words, but just to break it down. So we know that usually youth are very interested in a wide variety of things. So our aim is really just to strengthen their God-given abilities through what Pastor was talking about in terms of the internal aspect of it, where he had the gentleman being here, and then we had the teacher, the person representing family, and the pastor. So that is essentially what our community-based effort is. So we're going to bring in persons who will be specialized in areas, whether it be baking or plumbing or even electrical work, to kind of capture the interest of our youth. And the overall arching effect is really to have a couple workshops during the July-August period, because, of course, school is out and we want to channel that kind of passion and drive in them during this time where they don't have to focus on studies and that kind of thing. Hold on. Okay, much better. Oh gosh. Sorry, I have a little allergic reaction on my lip. Okay, so basically what we want to do is have a community effort where we have them come and showcase their talents and their skills and even team up with other churches in the community, hence building connection. And then we're going to kind of craft our skills and hone those abilities so that persons can see, okay, yes, this youth ministry is thriving, but they're also focusing on different aspects to help them, one, earn an income and feel better about themselves, because sometimes through baking and just having normal interaction, you realize some persons have a low self-esteem and they have a sense of purpose when they feel as if they're giving back, they're needed, they're wanted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just one question. You said we're going to bring in a person with these skills. Where are these people going to come from?
So we're going to first lean into our church family. I know a lot of persons have networking skills and they may be able to give us other persons who may be certified in certain areas. So we're going to get quality persons who know what they're doing to kind of channel our young people in the right direction.
Great. But what I would also encourage is that you mentioned it, so I know that's part of it, right? Because what I realize is that sometimes we outsource, and sometimes we also have persons within the congregation who never thought that they had something to give. Regular person, they come back. But if we start maybe by saying, listen, this is what we're doing as a church. We're looking for people. This is our plan. We need persons who will be willing to do, to help us do this. We need volunteers. And you start there. You start there. It's important also with the networking and so. One is that it will increase the sense of the largeness of the church. And there's also something called you create other developmental settings because you want to show them that you can develop not just within here, but it also provides them with greater connections, which is what you mentioned, right? I'm thinking about the potential of that because you want to teach them the entrepreneurial and those. Are those church skills or life skills?
Life skills.
Life skills. So you're also teaching them something that they can take outside. You can also teach them, okay, they're earning money. We never knew we could do that. Builds confidence. You can also show them how they could, do things like budgeting, planning, teach them about giving to the work of the Lord.
Yeah.
All of that there. And I think that something like that, I don't think I've ever really heard that angle before. I've heard the idea of maybe teaching it, but in terms of helping empower them, I know it was a thought. I would like to see what that becomes as a reality. I would encourage you all to think about it and see what that could become.
Hi, Pastor. I'd just like to mention I did it with one of my youths, my schools that I'm affiliated with. We did building skills like 101, but we did it more on the father level. So we would have gotten the fathers to incorporate and teach it's boys and stuff like that. And we did the same workman skills. We had an engineer and all those things. And we incorporated those, and it was really good. And the boys really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Great. Now, here's what would happen. You all are from different churches. But you can imagine now if you really collaborate, you can see how that could even strengthen church connections as well. And you draw from multiple resources. I think that was very good.
Good afternoon, everyone. Almost said morning. So this is my lovely group here. And what we basically spoke about was something that I encountered. So it's a real story as well. So for those who don't know me, I'm basically in the music ministry. I mainly play keyboard and I also worship here as well. So the thing that happened was it was mostly dependent on me. And I decided to teach persons. It was a lot of fight on. And many came. It was like they want to be like me and stuff. And I taught them. And when they learned, they left. But there was one person that God allowed me to choose. And she ended up staying. So God showed me that, she has the ability to do what his will has to be done. So while teaching her, she was very low self-esteem. She had no confidence because she don't know anything about music. She don't know anything about how to play keyboard, how to do anything at all. And I was like, don't worry. And I gave her my story with how I didn't learn. God literally helped me, right? And that helped her to boost her confidence. So while mentoring her, every time I came through the door, she always wanted to jump off the keyboard and give me. And I was like, no, you can't do that because that wouldn't give you the experience that I had where I had to learn by myself. So while she was playing on the stage, she was watching me what to do, and I was kind of trying to show her things in the congregation. I was like, okay, go so. And she followed me. And after service, gave her feedback and say, all right, this is how I could approach it this time. This is how I could do it. So that is building competence, right? So confidence, competence, and connection. So while I was teaching her as well, I was also building connection. You know, she started to feel comfortable that I could mentor her, teach her, and stuff, and show her how to take different techniques in certain things that you are getting difficulty with. And music is basically building character as well, because a lot of music, you know, could influence a character. You know, so I taught her how to, well, the persons I taught her as well, how you could use music to change your life, how you could play out your feelings instead of going and act out. You could go by your instruments, play out your feelings. You're feeling sad, play something sad. You're feeling happy, play something happy, you know? And I showed her how to do it. And I showed them, and it actually helped them with a lot of issues they were having, that, you know, issues that they cannot speak about. But it helped them to actually come on the instrument and actually worship with it. You know, so I taught them not keyboard. Playing instruments is not about, you know, playing and singing nice, but it's about worshiping God, you know, and caring for them. So sometimes when they come as well, you know, you're building a connection. Sometimes you'll realize a certain change in their behavior. I'm not taking long, I'm almost finished, right? A certain change in their behavior. So sometimes you might not even want to teach. You might want to talk about what's going on home, what happened in school, you know, something that they really can't talk about. And sometimes music wouldn't be able to, but I want somebody to talk to. So you could show them that you're not only a mentor, but you're also a friend, a father, a mother, you know, and you're with them with that. So with that being said, this was to help them not only develop in music and helping the church, but to also have certain approaches on life, right? And that's what we came up with.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. And what I would want you to see is that we have another group. Oh, sorry. We must hear this group.
We're going to be very brief. We just spoke about getting the youth involved in coming up with the program for the youth meetings. So instead of coming with our preconceived plan of, okay, these are the topics and this is how we're going to do it, letting them be the ones to come up with the topics and getting them involved also in presenting the topics. So it's not just, okay, the leaders coming and sharing about, let's say, sexuality, but getting them involved in that process as well.
Thank you so much. What I want you to see is something that I thought about and I realized is true. That now churches are natural developmental settings. They're natural without even trying to be. They have just about all it takes for healthy development. One. Secondly, unfortunately, a lot of the development that happens is serendipitous. You weren't aiming at it. It happened. You just happened to be doing things that cause development. All right? And so if it is that it's intentional, because of that, a lot of things, you can take some things and you can adjust them. Some things that you naturally do. And with some tweaks, some adjustments, you can make them developmental. I'm going to use one, and what I like is that you have variations. So you have But I hope that when you heard each other, you weren't necessarily saying, okay, I have to imitate them, but you're seeing different ways. I'm going to talk through, and I want you to help me with this one here. I'm going to be looking at something that we do to kind of wrap up the concept. And I want you to show me, I want us to talk through how, for example, we make this a developmental experience. Here's what we came up with. We were planning, and I used this illustration when I was teaching this year to our youth ministry. I said, a quiz, a Bible quiz. What are we going to do? We're going to have, there's a format for the service. We're going to be having worship. We're going to have a quiz, a section for a quiz, a Bible quiz. And we're going to have maybe something with the word we're going to share. That was a formula, a simple model. But I talked about, I said, let's look at one thing we do, for example. Because I want to show us is that if we give it some thought, we can take things that we naturally do, we usually do, and make some adjustments and make them developmental. Here's how the committee, your committee, because y'all are all the adults, your committee said, y'all ever did that in church? A quiz? Anyone who normally do that in church, how will you normally do it? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Led by the, I just want to make sure I hear you properly. Led by the, okay, good. Right, I just want to make sure I heard you. Hint. Who's being tested? Who's testing? I just want to be clear. All right, okay, good. All right. So what is the role? Let's evaluate my friend and sister. What is the role of the youth there? Now, what is the role? What role are the youth expected? That activity was designed for what role were the youth expected to play? Now, what role in terms of, after you do this, what did you want the youth to do? Was that? Maybe. I'm not sure if that might have been one of those things that happened. What were the youth supposed to do? You all expended this effort. What instructions did you give to the youth? Study. When it comes to the quiz itself, what are they to do? Right. They were to come and do the quiz. That's their role. Do the quiz. Right, yeah. Any suggestions how we could make that more developmental? Let's start from the beginning. Any suggestions as how we could make that more? Why y'all chose online? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Good. I am hoping we're hearing ourselves, not in a negative way, but I'm hoping we're hearing ourselves. The reason being is this. To quote, I remembered asking a question. to a group when I was interviewing them for the research. I asked why. Why are you doing that? I got two answers. The two answers was one, well, this is all we know. This is all we know. They were essentially doing it like they saw it done. Or, well, so for one, it was, this is all we know, or this is the way it is. And you realize that, what is that aiming at? What is that really aiming at? That activity, what is that aiming at? That's just, what's the outcome? The outcome really is, as my sister said, to pass the test, to see who get the most and who will get a trophy or whatever. But no, I'm critiquing, but I'm not trying to be critical. I'm not downing. I'm just saying we do what we know. I learned some things only because this is something I studied. And I realized, first thing I said when I finished, I said we're going to change the way. We're still learning. We're not perfect. But I said we're going to change the way we engage youth. Yes, sir. Okay. But I have a question when you're finished. You finished? Okay. Good. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm. Right. My question, I'm hearing you saying that, right? I just want to know who did you have in mind doing these things? Who did you have in mind? Right. Right. You're shifting it. You're making the youth co-creators. Give them the idea. All right? Can you trust your youth if you give them the idea for a quiz? That's all. Do you think we can trust the youth with that? Huh? You say we want to do some kind of quiz and let them come up with how. Let them come up with all of that. Let them come up with all of that. And you can act as a sounding board. You can act to help, wherever they help to get it done, maybe to help. Let them know, okay, if you have any questions, you have any challenge, come to me, etc. Okay? So we get in the youth now to design it. And you looking and you say, I want to do it like that, Right. Do you want this to be an activity that is done well or an activity that is developmental? She's keeping me straight. Yes. We want it to be developmental. Following? What else can we do? What else can we do? So we have the youth who are designing the quiz. They designed it. Anything else you could probably do? Mm. What's that? Mm. But online is easier for us. No. Good question. Right? Right. Right. Okay. Mm-hmm. Right. Right. No, I could see where, for example, you can use the AI maybe to, okay, I want to come up with, we want to do more with, we don't just want them to learn this information and win a prize. We want to see how we want to connect them to practice and whatever. So you can probably generate some prompts, scenarios, and so after they finish the quiz, you can probably maybe have some discussion on the book so that they not only had the fun part, and I'll say something on fun in a moment, but they also maybe get this body of information where they can see how this can become part of their real experience, right? And then here's it. It is easier for me to do it online. It's quicker, it's easier, it's more convenient. What are you saying? And that's an important point. It's not about the adult. It's not about the adult. It's more convenient. It's not about the adult. When you are trying to determine the best time for youth ministries, it's not about you. Don't set the youth ministries in a time that's convenient for you. It's not about you. The research says that in order for one study said that youth ministries are most effective when youth programs last for at least 9 months, held weekly, and for a minimum of 2 hours. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm. Why? But why? You know the why remains. Yeah. 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 Ideally, you go with the latter, ideally. Where you're trying to see if you can. Remember what I said from early, that the only persons who don't need to have the discussion is the youth themselves, but everybody else around the youth. All right? You have to have that engagement. They must understand. Putting youth at the center means that we are organizing in a way that best facilitates their development. And it has to be seen that it requires a certain kind of organization, a certain kind of administration, and there must be a willingness. So the idea is this: you have to be prepared to accept the responsibility, that if we are not creating the best environment and the best opportunities for the development of these youth, we're not going to have optimal outcomes. And we have to be prepared to accept that. And that cannot be on the shoulders of the youth leaders if the decision makers are outside the youth leader. And I'm a pastor. I'm not saying that, I'm not talking about a mutiny or whatever. We're just kind of talking about certain realities. Okay? Right, so I'm just kind of stimulating your mind so that you would know, okay, for example, it really is about putting youth at the center. It's not what is convenient for me, what is best for me. Some youth ministries, now here's it. For some youth, the youth ministries, you may not want to hear this, the pastor may not want to hear this, but in most cases, youth ministry is to the youth what Sunday worship is for the adult. What do I mean? I know I would like to believe that everybody wants to hear me. I'm the best preacher and everybody loves to just listen to my preaching. Young people are a different kind of animal altogether. For youth, in some cases, the service that they connect to the most is the youth ministry. You should accept that as a reality and leverage it. Make it an encounter for them. Make it a meaningful engagement for them. Don't treat it like it is their primary thing. So what this means then is that, one, what you want to do is to make sure that the experience is a meaningful one. Make sure that development is happening there. Two, if possible, keep youth ministries at least once a week. Thirdly, keep youth ministries for at least about 2 hours. Okay? The break, I know sometimes, or youth ministry, try not to let your youth ministry close off. I know in our organization, youth ministry close off. Our youth leader understands that we're not doing that. All right? We may shift how we engage at different points. The other point I want to recommend something. I would also recommend that if you call your gathering youth ministry, I'll explain why. Change the name. Or change the concept, change the thinking. Change the idea from youth ministry to youth ministries, plural. Here's why. One, normally when you say youth ministry, we associate this with a particular place and time and program or setting. What I want you to see your youth ministry where you meet, I want you to stop seeing that as the place where you all meet for youth ministry and start thinking of it as the primary place. The primary place. One. Meaning that most of the time we gather is here. But this is not the only place we can gather. One. Secondly, I would recommend this. In all that you do, think developmental and connect every activity to some kind of developmental goal. I want you to get that. Connect every activity to some kind of developmental goal. When you do that, you will start to be able to look at what you do and ask yourself, out of the 5 C's plus 1, connect it to something developmental. Right. I'm kind of talking off my head, so some things may not follow the sequence of the note, but we may not get beyond much of this here, given the time. A program. I want you to understand some concepts. Program, activities, and goals. Okay? I want you to understand your program. What is a youth program? I want you to see your program as, here's a youth program. This definition. A series of intentional activities. A series of intentional activities based on specific goals. Because I don't want us to have the idea of a negative view of a program. But I want you to see your program. When we have our program, we're developing a youth program. What is a youth program? My program is essentially a series of activities. All these youth want is activities. Activities are necessary. The program is activities. Activities is what you do. What governs what you do, however, is what? Goals. Key strategic goals. So what you really need is the right kinds of goals. And then you have this word called fun. All right? Fun. Fun is critical for young people. Fun has to do with how you want them to engage the program. All right? Fun is important to youth. But fun is not the goal. You understand what I'm saying? Fun is how you want to deliver the program, and the program is activity. I'm saying that because this is one of those concepts that is very often confused when we talk about youth, because all these young people want is fun. No. You understand that fun is important to youth. Okay? Now, here's a setting where you have it. Here's it. Depending on what you want to accomplish, which would be your goal or outcome, meaning, what are we targeting? And you can begin by looking at these things here. This is what we're targeting. Depending on what you want to accomplish as your outcome, the church setting may or may not be the best place for that. I want you to think about it. So, based on what you want to accomplish, Keon, you may say, you know what? Here might not be the best place. Maybe we can go this place next week. Okay, that's my 30-minute time with us, so I'm going to wrap up. Question. I'm going to wrap up. Why do you want to take the youth to Trin City Mall? Before, well, it's sell now. I don't know if we can still go. But why you want to take the youth to Eastgate Mall for those in the West, West Mall for, in the East, those in West for whatever. Why you want to take them there? Why you want to take the youth there? Huh? Because it's fun. Is that a good reason? Is that a good reason? No, that's not a good reason. Huh? Is that a good reason? Because it's fun. Ask yourself, should you even consider taking them to Trinity Mall? Huh? I'm hearing a divide. Some say yes. Huh? It can consider it, but here's the point I want to make. Can you make, what is the activity? We go into Trinity. We want to make this what kind of experience? Developmental. Question. Can you come up with one thing where taking the youth to Trinity Mall, you can make that a developmental experience for them? Food court, Bible study. But here's it. Yeah, okay, food court. Let me hear, yeah. Could go to evangelize, yes. Anything else? What is that going to develop? This is what I'm saying. The thing about it is that even getting there, how are they going to get there? Huh? Traveling. Church bus, whatever. Who is going to organize that? Why the youth leader? What we're saying is this. This is what I'm saying. The point I'm making is this. Now, obviously, this is not a case where you're just leaving the youth on their own. It is that you're thinking about how do we make these things developmental for you. I want you to think about that. My time is gone. What I'm saying is that some of the things that, now, it's not just saying we renaming it. You know, we used to call it food court. Now it's just, we used to Trinity Mall, a Trinity Lime. No, you have to think, what can we do to make this thing developmental? And then you will see that there's some things that you can tweak, you can adjust, some things that we normally do. What happens then is that John said he must increase and I must decrease. What happens is that the leadership starts to decrease. And they play a more supportive role, guiding role, mentoring role. All right? I think I learned a lot of things in youth ministry. And when I look back, I dedicated my thesis to my youth leader because I realized that, and he didn't have any training. I realized some of the things he did because he had no choice. He had no leaders in the church, so he had to pull young people. That helped me develop leadership. We would have an excursion every year, and I'm 19, and he giving me the church check to go in Bridgetown, Barbados, to arrange the bus, and 19-year-old me going up there like big man and whatever. You learn, and you don't realize you're learning leadership. I developed leadership simply because we had no choice. We had nobody else. So I was pushed there. That wasn't intentional. That was serendipitous. But what I'm saying is this. If we think about it, if we really think about it, the one thing I would want to ask you to do is to at least start thinking developmental. Holistic. At least start to think about that and then ask the Lord prayerfully, how can we begin to make this shift so that these natural resources that are around us developmental. I want to commend all of you all from the depth of my heart who work with youth. I have a heart for you all. I love young people. I love youth work. I had the option of building on one course of studies, and I decided I'm going to put my resources and my money where my mouth was, essentially, and I trained with the express purpose of helping people involved in Christian youth work do what they do better. This is my heart. This is my desire. And I hope that I would have said something that would have been helpful to you all. And if there's any other way in the future that I might be able to help you in your important work of working with youth for the honor and glory of God, I'm willing, and it's my desire to help for the glory of God. Thank you for your patience, and thank you for your time. I want to call out Crystal.
Thank you, Reverend Harper. I hope you all were inspired this morning and ready to implement some of these principles in your various churches. While he was speaking, I would have passed something like this around. Your feedback is important to help us understand what you would have learned from it, what are your takeaways, where we could improve. So if you are able to, please scan the code, or if you don't have access to scan the code, if you didn't register, leave your information. I could always email that to you. Before we go, I just want to I have some questions, right? So the first answer pop-up will answer. What is the meaning of holistic development? I want to understand what you would have remembered from our conversation today. What is the meaning of holistic development? Okay, not there. Right, so he answered correctly. It is nurturing a young person among multiple domains. He's correct, right? So, please, let me come to you. So here you are. Lord have mercy. So, right. So the next question. What is a key question to ask about your youth ministry if you want to assess the effectiveness of your ministry? Keon. So repeat that. He kind of close, eh? Right, young lady here. How developmental? I'm using the words the speaker would have used, right? How developmental is my youth ministry? Right, so I'm not asking the third question because it was on the board for a long time. So one person, if you could just share with me something that stuck out to you, something that resonated with you here this morning, if you could come quickly and share that.
Afternoon. So what would have stuck out to me was engaging the youths more. And what I mean by that is that not just the youth committee or the leaders doing all the work, meaning if we go in somewhere as a team, we wouldn't just do all the work, but engage the youths more so that they would have a say, so that they would feel important. And I guess that's where the 5 C's might come in, where they may feel more engaged in activities or situations that may occur within the youth group, if that makes sense. Because as youth leaders, we would usually do most of the work and just let them know, well, this is what we would be doing for the next month, or this is what we would be studying, and they would do it. but engage them more so that they will feel a part. So when they do it, they wouldn't feel like we are just dropping something on them, but they would feel like, okay, everybody, including the leaders, are part of it. So that's what I took away from that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. See, she was rewarded for her braveness. So again, I would hope that you all were able to be inspired here this morning. What you receive, you would be able to take it back to your churches, implement it. Now, don't go and bully the pastor and say, well, Reverend Harper says so. But, try to at least strategically implement some of the things that you would have, heard today. So I just want to give a special thanks to the apostle of this house, Apostle Justin Smith, for opening his church doors here at Kingdom Community Fellowship Foundation. Thank you, Apostle Justin, where we are able to conduct this session today. Thank you to Sister Deborah, the lady in the back there, and her IT team for giving of your Saturday, to make this event a success. Thanks to Pastor Raymond O'Keel for his assistance in promoting. To my husband and sons. My husband is in the back, my elder son is gone. The younger one is not here, but he did prepare. He did prepare the lovely cheese paste for the sandwiches this morning. So thank you to my children. Without their support, well, I'll leave that there. Now, most of all, thank you to Reverend Harper for your continued support and encouragement. He challenges my ability, keeps me on my toes and always thinking. Not just me, but all of his students, and we have a few here today could attest to that. Reverend Harper is really challenged. I mean, if you all think you were put on the spot this morning, sit in our classes. Anyway, let's leave that there. But thank you very much, Reverend Harper. I appreciate you. So I want to say thank you very much. I know we cannot pay you for your time, but I just want to show you some appreciation for giving of your time and continuous effort. Reverend Harper is one of a very few lecturers you could call and have conversations, very lengthy conversations at times. On the phone, he will give up his time freely, and he will give up his time to even host sessions on Zoom for us outside of classes that will continue to inspire us, continue to help us develop as ministers in training. So we want to say thank you. So before we leave, I would like to ask you all to give an offering. We want to leave something with the church. We would also like to contribute to what would have happened here today. I mean, going into planning a session like this is costly. So I would like to ask you to give an offering before I close off this evening. I wouldn't keep you too long again. Ayana, the lovely Ayana and Amanda are passing around with the baskets. And I will ask Keon, who is probably here with the biggest group, to close us in prayer. And when you are finished. By the way, how many people here from Redemption? Right, so nearly this entire side, yes. So next time we'll see more than that from Faith Assembly. Because Faith Assembly has a lot of youths. Oh my, sorry. That's where I remember you from. Well, wherever you come from, we'll see a bigger group next time. And Carissa, you're watching me, but yes, we hope to see a bigger group from Arima Open Bible as well. All right, so Brother Keon,